Hi, folks. Welcome to Write More Right Now. I'm your host, J. Patrick Lemarr. In the coming days, especially in 2025, in the new year, we're going to build this channel out into something that I hope will be very useful to you wherever you are in your writing journey. Whether you're a writer just starting out, trying to figure out whether you want to traditionally publish or independently publish, or some sort of hybrid publishing model, or whether you're in the publishing side of things and maybe you're an editor or someone who is looking to help other writers, achieve the goals that they've set for themselves. We're hoping that this channel will be something that will be useful to you. Along the way, we'll meet a lot of talented people, indie authors, traditionally published authors, people that are behind the scenes making things happen, people that know BookTube in and out, people that know marketing in and out. And we want to dig into the nitty gritty of how this whole machine operates and sort of demystify it for those of us that may be new in the journey. And for those of us that are a little further along, we want to offer, our expertise and the things that we've experienced, maybe some pitfalls that we hope to help you avoid. But I'm very excited. This is sort of a preview episode for us, a way of launching that we hope will give you just a taste of what this channel aims to be about. Our first guest today is Sandy Linder, and I'll bring her on in just a moment. The reason it's very special for me is that my first live stream interview was with Sandy Linder. I met Sandy through the Imaginarium Convention, which happens every year in Louisville, Kentucky. You'll hear me talk about that on this channel, I'm sure, in the days and months ahead. But it's a very special place, and it was a great place for me, kind of feeling my way into a new area. We had just moved to the Indiana, Kentucky area to meet other authors at different places in their journeys and settle into a rhythm where I can learn from them, where I can help people that aren't quite as far along as I am. And it just became a really sweet experience for me. And in that first event that I attended, I got to meet Sandy Linder. Sandy's a fantasy author. She's a short story author. She's done so many things, and we'll go into her bio more in just a moment. But what struck me about Sandy first was her kindness and her compassion. She didn't know me from Adam that first event. She came over to my book table, bought a book from me, and then within a month or so, she reviewed that book on her YouTube channel, which you'll find the link for in the show notes as well. It was a really impactful moment for me that someone who is further along in the game than I am took some interest, had enough kindness and compassion to not only take time out of her busy schedule, and she's very busy in those conventions, to chat with me and to get to know me a little bit. And every time I go back to Imaginarium, I always look forward to seeing Sandy. So I'm going to bring her on now, and we're going to talk about one of her new releases, as well as a lot of the other things that she's up to. Welcome with me, Sandy Linder. Sandy, good to see you.
Hi there. Good evening. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, so excited to do so. As I said, your kindness to me over the last few years has really made an impact on me, and I know for you, I know you're humble enough that you're probably not that, but it really is, because I spent a long time I moved to this area from the DFW area, and Dallas Fort Worth is huge, and there are a lot of writers there. Like, I could never find an inroad or an on-ramp into that writing community. It was meeting people like Stephen and Holly and you and
Mhm.
Miriam that really made me feel like I finally found a place in the writing community where I could learn and grow and ask questions, and where it was okay to not be okay and to not know everything, and to say, I'm kind of a
Right.
dummy where this is concerned. Can you help me out? And you were a big part of that. So I want to thank you for that. And thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on the show tonight.
Oh, well, thank you. It means a lot to me to hear you say something like that. I mean, it's very moving to me to hear that, because when you go to conventions, like Imaginarium or any of the other conventions out there, it's an opportunity to network, obviously, but for me, it's an opportunity to meet folks like yourself. It's an opportunity to go up to a table and to find a new to me author, someone I've never read your work before that first time that I got to go up to your table and buy one of your books and then read it. So it was a new experience for me too. So
Yeah, and I find that every time I go, um, meeting people, even if they do something completely different than what I do,
Mhm.
making that connection and kind of learning about them and learning what they're after.
Mhm.
For all of our differences, we all have these similar things that we're after. We're always trying to get our books in more hands. We're always trying to figure out how to leave our readers wanting more. And so we all talk about the things that we're passionate about. We kind of nerd out about book stuff.
Yeah.
And it's such a great time, and such a great way to get to know people, I think. But
Right.
I know
I
that.
think that, Stephen and Holly have built, I mean, we call it a family reunion each year that we show up there, right? We call it that family reunion, but they've built this community of people who they want to help one another. And when we go there, people want to have those conversations like you're talking about. They want to have those conversations and work through, hey, I've got this thing I'm working on, and I'm at this point where I don't know where to go next in this story. And there's going to be someone in that little group around you who's going to say, oh, hey, you could try this. Or they're working on a screenplay and someone's going to say, oh, hey, you could try this. There's always going to be someone in that group, in that family setting, who's going to want to help you. And it's not just the creative side of it. I mean, when you go to that convention, when you go to Imaginarium, there's going to be someone there who knows how to help you with the behind the scenes stuff, the logistics of it, the taxes part of it. There's going to be someone there who's willing to help you like walk through some of the business side of the thing as well as the creative side. I mean, it's amazing to me.
Yeah, it's an invaluable asset, and beyond
Mhm.
what you get from it in terms of the business side of it, which is important, right? Paying our taxes
Mhm.
are important. Nobody wants to get hit with that bill at the end of the year. But it's also a place to really nerd out with people that do what you do and kind of rejuvenate and replenish
Yeah.
the reserves of that joy that you take in what you do. And I think that's why people tend to think of it as like a family reunion, right?
Mhm.
You kind of get energized. Now, don't get me wrong, you're going to be exhausted after 3 days, but you also kind of, um, I don't know, recharge your batteries a little bit creatively, by being around other people that are as creative and as passionate about it as you are.
Right.
And that's a great thing.
Definitely.
So
Yeah, I've discovered that when I go to Imaginarium, I can you're there and it's like you're on 24/7, right? You're on and you're going to the different panels and different workshops and I usually I have a vendor table, like you did that first year you were there. I have a vendor table each year where I'm trying to, move some books while I'm there, but it's just this creative like tornado the whole time that you're there. And by the time you're done with it, you're exhausted, but my brain is like on fire after that convention. I usually drive up to it and then drive back, and it's about a 12-hour drive. But on the drive back, my brain is just firing on all cylinders, and I can do the entire drive back. I don't have to stop and sleep because my brain is just overactive all the way back home with the story ideas and what I want to do with characters and what I want to do with this next story idea and this next new thing that I want to work on. It'll re-energize you to be around that creative ball of energy with all those people thinking of all these ideas. Yeah, it'll re-energize you and just it turns my brain on, that's for sure. Yeah.
well, we'll move on from Imaginarium, although I will say that I
Okay.
missed for sure. And this past year, it was the weekend of all the computers going down everywhere and causing such travel difficulties for so many
Yeah.
people. I know there were a lot
Mhm.
there last year, but we're looking forward to seeing you
Yeah.
back next year for sure.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
I want to dig into your bio just a little bit. 30 years in publishing in one form or another, right? For the day job and for what you do, what you have a passion for with fiction and poetry
Mhm.
things. That's a long time. That's a long time. And I feel like if
Yeah.
you're not if you're not passionate about a thing, it can be really easy to burn out after that kind of time. How do
Mhm.
you separate? Because I know what you do for your day job is very different than what you do on the creative side of things. So, how do you separate that and maintain your passion for um, the fiction, which we're going to get to your latest work here in just a minute? But how do you separate those things and kind of keep the momentum going?
Okay. Well, the day job is very. It's very technical. I'm a magazine editor during the day, and that's a construction publication that I edit during the day. It's asphalt construction, to be precise. So I have to be very, very technical in what I'm doing during the day, and I physically locate myself in one part of my house for my day job. I get to work from home. I'm very blessed and I'm very thankful that I get to work from home to do the day job. So I have one room where all my stuff is set up for the day job, and the computer is in there, and all of my resources are in there, past magazines that we've done, all that stuff is in there, so that I am physically locating myself in that room. When I step out of that room, I step into whatever fantasy world I want to create. The rest of my house is, for my pet birds and me and my writing. I can write on anything else, anywhere else in this house, and just instantly dive into whatever fantasy world I want to be diving into. Anywhere else in this house, I can write anywhere. So I separate it physically. There is an actual physical separation between the day job and the other writing that I do, the poetry writing that I do, the short story writing that I do. There's an actual physical separation. But then there's also that brain separation, I guess you might call it, because the writing that I do for the day job is so technical and so construction oriented and so factual and so fact based. I mean, I need to call up like the CEO of a company and talk to him about how he's getting a road built, right? I need to be able to talk to him about that kind of stuff in the very real world. So my brain has to click into that. It has to click into the real world and be stuck in that real world for, 8 or 10 hours a day. But when I step out of that room, then I can click that off and I can go into any world I want to.
That's great.
I
I'm
don't know
glad.
if that answers the question or not, but
No,
there's a physical separation, and there's also that the crazy creative separation too.
sure. And I'm glad you brought up your birds because I was
Oh,
going,
yeah.
um,
Yes.
mainly because of how they factor into your fiction. I want to show, I've got one
Oh,
of
yeah.
book your choices trilogy here. And,
Mhm.
and I know you and I have talked about the important role your birds play, specifically when it comes to that fiction. So maybe share a little bit about how they factor in and the importance of them in the fiction that you're doing there.
Yes, of course. The In the Choices trilogy, there is a character, one of the Ophersian. He does have a hawk that will go between, the fairies' messages in between. That hawk has an important role, but I don't have as many bird characters who have an important role in that series as other series that I've written. I have, I call it my Gentle Dragons series that I've only done one book in so far. But the Gentle Dragons series, the book Move the Stars, has a set of shoulder dragons. This is a young adult novel, and each one of the shoulder dragons is based on one of my pet birds. Each one of those shoulder dragons is, I mean, each one of them has the characteristics and the colorings of one of my pet parrots. And I did that on purpose. I wrote that with purpose because each one of those characters, each one of those little shoulder dragons just entertains me so much. And I know it entertains the reader too, just the way they interact with the characters. So I've sort of I've infused the books with birds in different ways. I wrote an entire book called How to Train Your Human, a guide for parrots. And that one I wrote from the parrot's point of view. And that was a nonfiction book. So that's not quite what we're talking about here, is it? It's
Right.
a little bit different. It's a nonfiction book, and it's written to help people like myself who get a pet bird and they don't know where to start with their research. I call it the book of stuff you wouldn't know to Google, right? You wouldn't know what to look up. Like
Right.
like if you're a new parrot owner, you might not know to to look up, okay, can I use my oven on this particular setting or not? Well, no, you can't use it on the cleaning setting if you've got a pet bird in your house. But you wouldn't know to look that up
Sure.
necessarily when you're a new pet owner. So anyway, that kind of stuff is what's in that book.
Well, what I thought was really cool about that is you've essentially immortalized your
Mm-hmm.
by adding them into what you do. And I think we all do that as writers. If you're watching the show kind of early on in your journey, you probably use people around you, bits and pieces maybe, to sort of build out your the world of fiction. And I think we all do that. Sometimes for me, it's just the way someone speaks, like the rhythm of their speech.
Mm-hmm.
Some
Right.
it's just someone's name, or I'll use the last name of a friend or something as just a nod to them, but it sort of brings to mind a characteristic that they have that I want to imbue that character with. And I find that to be really interesting. Sometimes I don't know that I'm doing it until I'm in it. And then I'm like, oh, okay. I guess I took that little part of them and sort of
Right.
infused it into what's happening there.
Right.
Um,
Well, in
yeah,
the book we're going to talk about in a little bit, Silver Bells, I infused characteristics of my best friend. Her name is Christine. I infused characteristics of hers into the character Candy Harris. And I didn't realize I was doing it until after the fact. And I saw bits and pieces of Christine in that character. I'm like, oh, there's Christine. I recognize her in there because, I love my best friend. She's wonderful. And to have those little glimmers of Christine in that character just after the fact, I was like, oh, I love that. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Although, we have to be careful when we're doing something like that. I can say I based some of my shoulder dragons on some of my parrots. I can say I based them on those parrots because my parrots aren't going to sue me.
right.
My birds aren't going to come after me later and sue me for that. But
You're
when we're crafting characters, we have to be more cautious about. Okay, we can cherry pick a characteristic of this person in real life and a characteristic of this person in real life, and we can imbue those characteristics in there and form a character. We can't base a character on a human out here in the real world without the litigious society coming after us, right? We have to be so careful about that.
sure. And even
But yeah.
like, or I have a short story that mentions a very particular amusement park, and
Mm.
in your state actually. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure I can do that depending on what I'm going to do with that, so I may just need to reference it without referencing it directly. And sometimes we have to make those calls. We have to be careful
Right.
with those things. um
Mhm.
but since we've already brought up Silver Bells, I want to dive into that. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I haven't had a chance to dig into it yet. But I love the quote that you got from Stephen Shrewsbury. And
Ah,
I just want to read this one little snippet of it. Sandy controls tension like a chiropractor. That sentence alone makes me want to read it. I love that. Next time I see Stephen, I'm gonna have to mention that to him. That what a fantastic line.
yeah.
But I love the notion because I've written my share of horror fiction. It's not primarily what I do, but I do dive into it now and then. I love that you've tackled a Christmas horror tale. Tell us what inspired that.
Probably caffeine. I I wrote this thing. I wrote it for the 3-day novel contest in 2023. So last year,
Wow.
in 2023, the 3-day, I think it's Anvil Press up in Canada. They still do the 3-day novel contest over Labor Day weekend.
I've done the 3-day
I
novel.
decided,
It's a whip.
yeah, have you?
It is
Oh,
tough.
okay.
Yeah, it is tough.
Mm-hmm.
I admire you
Yeah,
for trying to tackle that. I
I
I did it once. It
I
was
love it. Oh no, I didn't. I did not win. No, I've done it. I don't know how many times now I've done it. I do. I tackle it every year. I love it. It is exhilarating. And yeah, I fully enjoy it. There was a couple of years there where Anvil Press, or the company that had taken it over for a short while, I don't want to say they were floundering, but they were taking quite some time to get the results back. So another Canadian company, Faybreak Books, they started up a similar contest, and they called it the 3-day novella contest. And they wanted a shorter word count, but they did do the same thing, and they did it over a weekend in the spring. And that one, I came in second place 2 years in that one. I came in second place with Return to the Tribe and Fire, and that one got published. They published it. And then one of my fantasy stories came in second place, and that one hasn't been published yet. I've Things have just kind of dropped off the map with them, and I'm not sure if they're having some struggles, or what's happening up there with that contest. But getting back to Silver Bells, I wrote that over the 3-day novel weekend, and I felt that pressure of the deadline, and I wanted to put that pressure and that angst into a story, and I just felt like, let's make it Christmas. Let's put the pressure and the angst and the horror. Let's put that around Christmas, the deadline of December 25th.
Right.
And so that's what I wrote,
Interesting. Yeah, because the
and I loved it.
Christmas are filled with no small amount of tension, right? You do have got family to meet and greet. You've got things that, presents to shop for, things that, depending on where you are in your life, you may have children to shop for, schedules to work out, and it can be a lot of tension. So I feel like setting something that's more horror centric in that time of year is interesting, and in contrast sort of to the usual joy and
Right.
hope that we kind of tack around that time of year. So
Hmm.
3 days you tackled this story. Um, remind I may be misspeaking here, so if I am, correct me. But you go into those, you don't really have much of an out. Like, you can have sort of a vague idea of what you want to do, but there's not a lot of prep time. There's not a You kind of go in blind and jump in, right?
They allow you to have an outline. I'm so sorry. You're going to hear my birds in the background now. They allow you to have an outline. Um, they 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 suggest that you have the outline, and you can write some stuff down, but they tell you don't be married to that outline. Like, if you veer away from it, don't worry about it. And I didn't even outline for this one. I just knew I wanted it to be Christmas, and I knew I wanted to have some of those like Hallmark Channel tropes in it. Like, I
Right.
wanted the main character to have like a Hallmark Channel name, like Ivy or Holly or Mary, right? I wanted one of those names like you see on the Hallmark Christmas movies. So her name is Ivy. So that's what I did. I threw some of those weird tropes into it and just ran from there.
I think
Yeah.
that combination. I like it. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. I hope to.
Oh, okay.
What To me, just on the surface level, it sounds like a great combination because Hallmark movies, for all the people that love them, we kind of know what they are, right?
Yeah.
They're a popcorn. Like, I don't have to think too hard about it. I don't have to pay, and you kind of know the tropes going in.
Right.
That you're building a story around those sorts of things, and this sort of spookier undercurrent, and
Mhm.
things shaping up sounds like something I would enjoy for sure. And we will have the link for Sandy's book, as well as all the rest of her work, in the show notes. So be sure and check that out as well. Um, so for the writers in, watching this, that and
You
doing,
freeze?
did you? I was still hearing me.
Oh, yeah. It's yeah. It froze up, and I didn't hear anything.
Okay. Well, we'll
I
give it
might
a,
have to go back for a second.
yeah.
Okay.
It seems to be okay now. Okay. For any new
Okay.
writers,
Yeah, I got you back. Okay.
okay. For any new writers who are watching, um, who, may be saying to themselves, well, Sandy's been doing this for a while. She writes poetry, she writes fantasy, she writes this new spooky Christmas story. She's written all these different things. She's well underway in her journey. What would you say to them? Because, you and I know that it doesn't matter how far you are in your journey, there's always stuff to know. There's always new things to glean from other people, and,
Mhm.
there's not really a getting there, right? I mean, aside from your Stephen Kings or your, you know, people that are in that top, like, 2% of people selling books, like, aside from them, most of us, no matter where we are on the journey, there's more to do and more to try, and we keep learning and we keep trying. So from your perspective, with um, your career thus far, what would you say to a writer who's just starting on this journey to encourage them in, whatever steps are ahead? What keeps you coming back to the table and trying this thing again and learning more and doing better the next time? And I learn from you all the time. I learn from all the folks at Imaginarium. I learn from other writers that I watch on YouTube and other places. I From where I'm sitting, we never stop learning. But what can you say after this journey of yours that would encourage maybe the new writer who is just completely overwhelmed thinking about taking their first steps into this unfamiliar terrain?
Um, well, I first of all, I would say try to suppress that feeling of being overwhelmed. I know it's difficult, but don't let it overwhelm you, because if you find joy in writing, then go for it. Don't let something like stress or anxiety or worrying about the next step take that joy from you. I have been writing since I was a little girl, okay? And I love it. Writing is something I enjoy. I would lose my mind if I didn't have the opportunity to sit down and write at the end of the day. At some point during the week, I need to sit down and do some writing. I need to do it. It is part of me, okay? If that is part of you as a new writer out there, don't let anxiety or feeling overwhelmed or worrying about the next step take that away from you. If you're worrying about the next step and that's taking away the joy of this step, then stop worrying about it. And I know that is so much easier said than done, but the first step is to get the thing written. I mean, you can't market the book until it's done. Well, you can start marketing it anytime, but you can't market a book. You can't sell the book if it's not written. You can't edit the book if it's not written. You can't send the book off to an agent or an editor or the marketing person or the purchasing person at the big five. You can't send the book off to them until it's written. So you got to write it. Whether that's the book, a novella, a short story, whatever it is that you're working on, you got to write it first. So sit down and write it. Button the chair and fingers on the keyboard, right? You've got to write it and get it done.
I agree.
And that experience itself is where the joy is. If you're a writer, that experience is the fun part. That's the good part. That's the juicy part. That's the part where the characters are in your head talking to you and feeding you the stuff and telling you what to do. Live in that. Yeah, that's what I would tell the new writer. Enjoy it, love it, keep at it. And I would also suggest, if you are writing a book in a series, if you've got a story that's quite long and you recognize that it needs to be a duology or a trilogy, go ahead and write the second book and the third book. Go ahead and work on those other books while you're shopping that first one, or while that first one is off to the editor. Get those things lined up. I fully believe in getting those things lined up and ready to go. I fully believe in that. Oh, it will help you with marketing later. Trust me, it will. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I do want to piggyback on something you said in just a minute. But first, I
Okay.
want to, to the point of finishing what you start.
Mm.
Early, sort of my planning in my head, thinking about whether or not I could do what I want to do. I went to a book signing event with Stephen J. Cannell, who is a TV producer, and he had sort of retired from producing television shows. He did all the shows in the '80s, like his name was on everything. But he had kind of retired from the TV side of things and
Okay.
crime novels, and well, I'll go to this thing. He's going to be in my backyard practically. I'll go and sit in on the Q&A. When the time came that I got to ask a question, I said, what separates um a writer who makes it from a writer who will never make it? And he said, finishing what you start. Um and he went on to say
Mm,
that so
mhm,
much of what we do is, what we call talent might be this natural thing that's hardwired into us. Some people have a natural inclination toward writing, just like some people are naturally gifted at guitar, are naturally gifted at any number of things. Some
mm,
people talent, but with writing, talent is not the only thing. It's about finishing what you start and then crafting it and working at it after it's on the page. And he said that, the majority of people who don't make it are the people who, have this great idea and they start and then they second guess themselves so much through the process of writing it that they end
yeah,
it aside and getting frustrated and they never finish it. And he's like, but even if you
mm,
know it's bad, even if you're three-quarters of the way through and you know it's not going to land the way that you want it to land, finish it and take a break
mhm,
and come back and start chiseling away at it and let people read it and take feedback and develop a thick skin where that's, where feedback is concerned. There are aspects of writing, if you're going to do it for a living, that you need to get used to. And one of them is
mhm,
that it's not just about what talent you have, it's about learning the craft of writing. And you do that by experience. And that stuck with me that, it's great to have a great idea, right? You and I'm sure both of us and every writer that we know gets really excited when we have a good idea for a story and we sit down and we get to like let it spill out onto the page. But that's such a small part of the overall process. It's
mhm,
the part we may enjoy the most, but it's still the small part of the overall piece. So I think that's a great point that you made there. I
yeah.
wanted to ask you though, you said in your answer, and this may be getting a little off the rails, you'll forgive me. Maybe this is my sick brain wanting to take off on a tangent.
It's all right.
You talked about and I don't remember exactly how you said it, but something along the lines of you know, the passion coming in when you sit down with the characters and you kind of let them wheel through your story and that kind of thing. I find it interesting whenever I talk to people who aren't writers, who don't do what at least fiction writers.
Mhm,
I just had a discussion with someone else the other day, and we were talking about um, the process. And I said, well, for me, I have this idea of the story I want to tell, but it's the story. The story is always driving the car, and I'm just in the back seat. I'm in the back seat trying to write down all the things that are going on
mm,
in the clown
right.
car and make sure that I get it down. But and I may decide where the story starts and I may decide where the story ends, but sometimes once I've once I've helped build out these people, then they just kind of take over and do their thing. Sometimes a character zigs when I think they're going to zag. Sometimes I have to
Mm,
bend the narrative a little bit to go with to take the next step because the character didn't do what I thought they were going to do in that position or didn't say what I thought they were going to say in that position, but I've made them so real in my mind that
mhm,
when I got there, I realized that they would never say that. They would never do that.
mhm.
That happened for you, or am I a crazy person? I guess that's
Oh,
I'm asking.
no, I've been there, and I sometimes I'll have, like, if you have a character who is just hell-bent on they want the story to go this direction, they want a certain scene to do this thing, and it can't because it's gonna derail the story and the plot's gonna go all over the place. Sometimes I will sit down and I will open a document and I will type out the scene. I will just do what the character is telling me to do. I will just put it on the page and get that character to shut up. And then the character is happy that this scene has been written, and I can go back to the story and go back to the document that we're supposed to be working on. But I get that out of that character's system, and that character can leave me alone about that scene because now it's done. It's down, it's on paper, on the screen, however you want to say it. It's done. It's in a document that I can save somewhere on the computer over there, out of the way, and get back to the story.
Well, that's a
Sometimes you just gotta corral these people in your head.
sure. And I was gonna
Yeah.
say that's another thing that people who don't do what we do tend to not understand as well, that we're not, we're not usually running that show. The stories, the question we always get, I think no matter where you are sort of in your writing process, people ask, "Where do your ideas come from?" And I don't have an answer for that. I mean, I they just, sometimes I'm in the shower, sometimes I'm brushing my teeth or driving my kids to school, and a story
Mhm.
flies into my brain, and then I have to write it, because if I don't write
Right.
it, I can't shake it. I can't get rid of it. Um, Sometimes I write stories that I'm not, that I know, they're gonna I don't know where they fit yet in the context of what I'm doing, but I had the idea and I've got to get it down because I need to move on.
Right.
Um,
Mhm.
that's an interesting thing, I think, and it may seem a little odd to people that don't do what we do. Um, but that's why, to me, it's fun to go to something like Imaginarium where people do understand that sort of thing, and you get
Right.
to just nerd out about all
Mhm.
the
Right.
idiosyncratic things that are
Yeah.
part of this crazy life that we've chosen for ourselves.
Right. But we're among our tribe at a
Yes.
place like Imagineering. We're among the tribe, the people who understand, the people who get it. I mean, I have sticky notes and I have little scraps of paper taped to the doors in my house. Like on the back of the bathroom door, I have all these little sticky notes and stuff that are for like poetry and random story ideas and just random stuff, ideas that don't really fit in any of the series that I'm working on. Then on the bedroom door, I have all these just like sticky notes and random prompts and random ideas that go in the Dragons in Space novels. That's the Dragons in Space door. I've got different doors in my house where different ideas fit into different stories, but they're random, crazy. They're just random thoughts, random pieces of dialogue that a certain character says. Poof, just there. My bird sitter who comes to the house when I have to travel for work, she probably thinks that I've lost my mind because I've got sticky notes all over my house, just taped up, sticky notes that say things like, his heart's in the right place. You mean in his chest? They're just weird things taped to my walls. That's because I don't want to lose track of that little snippet of dialogue.
Yep.
I don't want to lose it. I don't want to lose those ideas that came to me in the middle of the night.
I
Yeah.
know that feeling well.
Hmm.
When I was writing
Yeah.
the little character introduction piece
Yeah.
a while back, The Willing, the Wounded, and the Wizard, there was a line in one of those short stories.
Mhm.
One mentions that my character Dylan Drake is 80% mystery or whatever, and
Oh, I
immediately,
lost you again. Yeah, it skipped you again. It
uh,
froze you. I lost you.
okay, am I back now?
Okay, yes, you are back now.
Okay. I remember
Okay, so there was the character sketch. Yeah, you were talking about the
er
character sketch.
yeah, the character had mentioned that Dylan's like 80% mystery, and then immediately in my mind, and I was doing something else, and I remember thinking his response to that would be, "What's the other 20%?" And so I wrote it down because I didn't wanna forget it. It was such a thing that made sense to me from his perspective that, you know, in her mind, she was just saying he's mostly mysterious, but because she
Mhm.
put a number, he needed to know what that other 20% was, and
Correct.
sometimes we just know our character so well that those moments come and we have to jot
Mhm.
something down real quick, or, I just redid a promotional thing, for a character, and I rewrote the little tagline at the bottom of the promo piece like 3 times until I felt like I'd nailed it, and it was all about making it sound as if it came from that character's, like, it needed to sound
Yeah.
true to the character, and it took me like 3 or 4 tries to nail it. Um,
Mhm.
that's, that's the fun part of this thing for me. I'm always learning new things. I'm always, talking to people like you, and learning what I can, and watching from a distance. I watch your YouTube channel. You should
Yeah.
also watch Sandy's
Thank
YouTube
you.
channel. Um,
Thank you. Every view counts. Thank you.
you will on the screen right now, and also it will be in the show notes as well.
Oh,
Sandy's a great guest. She reviews books. She does fun booktuber tag things that are a lot of fun as well. She's a lot going on over there. and she's always pleasant to watch. I love, you know, I love connecting, listening to the Star Chamber show, which our friend
Mm.
Stephen and Holly do. Would you sponsor that show, don't you, Sandy? Aren't you a sponsor?
I try to. I try to do an ad. I try to do as many weeks as I can. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so you're all over the place.
I try.
Yeah,
I try.
it's
I
great.
tell well, and that's part of this writer's gig, right? I mean, when someone is I mean, I feel like I'm pretty serious about it, right? I want to get my name out there, not because I want people to know who Sandy Lender is. I want people to learn who my characters are. I want people to read these books, who these characters are. I want people to fall in love with these characters the way I have fallen in love with these characters. And that's not going to happen unless I promote these books, unless I promote Sandy Lender, unless I promote myself. No one's going to learn who I am. No one is out there cheerleading for me the way I can cheerlead for me. No one's going to do that.
Yeah,
So if someone is, I mean, the writers who are out there who get the book written and get it done and get it edited and get it ready to go, boy, you've written this thing. Your passion is in it. Now you get to show it to the world. You've got to have just as much passion for that.
yeah, and I know myself included. Sometimes we feel awkward about that because
Yeah,
we
yeah,
want we want to point people to the work, but so much of that feels like we're promoting ourselves or like we're saying too much about ourselves. But we need to get over that because they all, all of us put a face to, I don't need to know what Stephen King looks like, but I do. And
yeah.
so when he pops up in a movie or something, I'm like, Stephen King, but it's because he's so closely tied to what he does and he's developed
Right.
a brand around himself. And so you
Hmm.
know what to expect from him and from his work. And there are other people that fall into that category as well. So
Right.
for us, I know that some of you out there, especially if you're kind of new on this journey, you're probably saying to yourself, I get really uncomfortable. Maybe you're naturally an introvert and it feels really difficult or awkward to talk about yourself,
Me
um,
too.
or anything like that. Yeah, trust me, I've been there. But the thing is, you're only talking about yourself to segue into talking about the work, and the work, if you've put in the time and the energy crafting it that you need to, by the time you're there, by the time you're talking to people about it, you should be proud, because very few people make it to that point. So,
Right.
own that a little bit and say, here's this thing, this is what I made happen, and then you wouldn't have gotten that far if you weren't kind of a nerd about it. So let that nerd flag fly and talk
Right.
excited about, because most of the time if you're excited about it and you connect your excitement to something that excites them, then they're going to be in. I have sold so many books to people that stepped up to my table that I thought I had no chance of selling anything to, and it was all because of a conversation. It was all because, and the thing is, I don't go into those conversations going, I got to sell this person a book. I go into those conversations thinking, here's a person that I've never met before. Let me chat with them and get to know them
Mhm.
a bit. And if I don't have the kind of book that they're looking for, I was just at an event last month where someone asked me about mystery thrillers. And I said, I don't have any of those currently, but let me tell you who I know writes really good mystery thrillers. And I pointed them in the direction of some other writers that I know. But I was still grateful for the conversation and I was still grateful to have met them. And maybe they'll read my newsletter or connect with me at another event and remember that they had a good interaction with me. And those things matter. Those things count. Um,
Right.
yeah. So
Well, and there's just the opportunity to chat with someone about books and reading. That is valuable. I mean, that's a good conversation any day of the week, right? I was at a convention down in Tampa, and I'm going to forget the name of it now. But anyway, I'm ancient. Okay. Anyway, so I was at a convention down in Tampa, and a couple of girls came up to my table, and we were talking about vampire stories. I have a vampire satire series. We're talking about vampire stories and Anne Rice, and just having a good discussion about Anne Rice and her vampires. And that was wonderful. I enjoyed that immensely. And those gals weren't interested in buying my vampire books. They wanted Anne Rice stories, not vampire satire. But we had a wonderful conversation, and I remember it to this day. It was it was great. That kind of thing, that kind of interaction, I dig it. Like you say, it's we're nerding out on books, and I like that.
In a
I
world,
enjoyed it very much.
it seems fewer and fewer people are reading. Um, and I don't know that the statistics bear that out, but it does feel that way sometimes.
I just did a video about that on my channel last night.
All right.
On December 1st. I'm sorry, we're filming this on the 2nd. On December 1st, I did a video about that. And it was a response video to Jared Henderson here on YouTube. He did just a very good video about an article he read in The Atlantic about the dirge of reading that's happening at the collegiate level. College students right now they're feeling overwhelmed when a professor assigns to them a novel. They don't believe that they can read a novel in a week. They have not been taught how to read a full length novel. Our education system is failing these kids. They're being taught how to read snippets of novels. They're being taught how to read like a couple of pages out of a great work of art so that they can glean something from snippet for their standardized test. They're not being taught the full novel. They're not reading To Kill a Mockingbird anymore. They're just reading a little section about Scout, right? And that's really a shame. Now I don't know statistics. I didn't pay that close of attention, but that's what's happening at the collegiate level, and it's a shame. It's a problem.
But the kind of conversations that you're talking about, those are the kind of
Mm,
conversations that, maybe someone's fallen off a little bit and they've got a giant stack of books to be read, that they
yeah,
keep, and and maybe a positive conversation, maybe a good connection like that will prompt them to get started. And, because
yeah,
I really had such a great time talking with her about that, and it might just reinvigorate that desire to read. For me as a kid growing up, I think at 11, like I didn't read a lot of novels, but I got into comic books and I started reading comic books and kind of got in
mhm,
reading there. And then, um, when I got assigned a book for school, I could kind of jump from the fantastical elements of what I was reading in comics to finding the little fantastical, bits in the things that I was being assigned to read. And it made it seem like an easier progression for me, I think, than if I would have just started directly in novel. So we all have these things that we, I don't want to call it laziness because it's not. Like I think like you're saying,
yeah,
it's a, we've sort of trained ourselves to think in snippets and shorter
mhm.
content, and it does do damage over time.
I
And
believe
not
so.
for writers that are trying to sell full-length novels, but, people getting bored in movie theaters if the movie's longer than an hour and a half and zoning out and all of our content coming through stuff like YouTube and TikTok. And not that there's anything wrong with those platforms, but that, sometimes we need to be willing to, root ourselves down in understanding a thing. And sometimes it's not, it can't come to us in a 15-minute blurb. Um,
Right, right.
so tell me what's next after Sulphur Bells. What are you working on?
Got a list.
Oh, what are you not working?
This might take a while. No, I get the main thing I'm working on right now. I have a business book that I'm putting together. It's a motivational business book to help folks who have a day job to survive and then have a side hustle to thrive. So I'm putting together a business book that basically talks about what I do in my life, but to kind of help others to pursue that dream, that side hustle while they're keeping the job. Because I mean, the fact of the matter is, a lot of us out here have to have that day job to stay alive, to keep food on the table, to pay the electric bill, right? Um, but there's this side hustle, this extra dream, this other thing that we want to do too. And yeah, we can balance them both. So I've written this motivational business book. I've gotten some just excellent feedback from some businessmen that I've met over the years. I mean, got a 30-year career, and they've given me some excellent feedback and some ways to massage some of the sections, and it's coming together very nicely. Steven Zimmer edited one draft for me. Jen Selinsky edited the second draft for me. So it's coming together really nicely. It's going to be awesome really soon. It's ready for formatting at this point. So that's coming really soon. It's kind of exciting. And then, you know, some short story work. I'm doing some short stories and novellas.
That's great.
That's probably enough for right now. Since Christmas is coming up, that's probably enough for right now. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, it's always interesting when I tell my wife that I've got a new story percolating. The response is usually just like a shrug of, yeah, what else is new? Because there's always, it seems like when I get into, midway through editing something or making my second pass before I pass it on to someone else to edit, that invariably another story starts to encroach upon my brain then, and then I have to
Mhm.
sort of segment my time a little bit to make sure I can manage both. But
Right.
it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. When I hear
Yeah.
people complain about writer's block, I'm like, I don't know what that is. They keep
Yeah. Yeah. I've had people ask, you know, what do you do for writer's block or how do you overcome writer's block? I'm like, I don't know yet.
yeah.
I've not, I've
Um,
not had that challenge yet.
yeah. It's a good problem not to have, for sure. And I
Mhm.
sympathize. I can't imagine. I love writing so much. I love escaping the sort of hardness of the world sometimes to,
Yeah.
write something fanciful or fun or even scary, just to escape something
Mhm.
for a little bit. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's always more a case of I've got more stories than I have time. Um, so,
Yes.
but that's okay. I'll get to
Mhm.
it.
I have a little wooden box, and it's a very fantasy looking wooden box, right? And so inside this wooden box are scraps of paper that have ideas, because it's not enough that I have them taped all over my house, but in that box are just special story ideas that someday they will turn into novels if I live that long. I mean, I'm gonna have to win the lottery. Okay, that's the plan. I need to win the lottery so that I can like cut back on my day job hours because I like my day job. I don't want to give it up. So I need to cut back on that. And then I can keep my house, keep the electric bill paid, and just write stories. That would be the dream.
Sounds like a good sure. Uh, I always I tell people all the time that I've got more stories than I've got time left. So eventually, I've just had to make peace with the fact that eventually I'm going to be gone and there'll be a few stories that I didn't get to, and that's okay. As long as I tell the ones I can get to the best of my ability, that's okay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to be at the end of our time here. I thank you so much for being our first guest on Write More right now. If you've enjoyed this episode, then make sure you follow Sandy. Like I said, aside from the links that are on screen right now, all of that information where you can find her, where you can sign up for her newsletter, all those things will be in the show notes down below. Be sure and check her out on YouTube and all the other places where you can find her online. Sandy, hope to have you back with us again sometime soon to dig into bigger subjects, maybe with a panel of other writers. Excited to do that in 2025. Until then, I hope you have a great Christmas. And those of you that are joining us, I hope that you've enjoyed checking out what Write More right now can be. Until next time, write more right now.